Millionaire heard laughter upstairs, froze when he saw his maid dancing with his. It was late evening in the mansion. Silence usually filled the tall marble walls of Richard Lawson's house, silence that he had grown used to over the years. Richard was one of the youngest millionaires in the city, the kind of man everyone admired from a distance. His face had graced magazine covers, his business empire stretched across states, and yet his home felt colder than ice. His wife had passed away 5 years ago, leaving him with his young son, Ethan. Since then, laughter had been absent from the house. Richard believed he had compensated with wealth, expensive toys, private tutors, vacations abroad, but none of it worked. Ethan barely smiled, often locking himself in his room, drowning in loneliness. Richard, caught in the whirlwind of boardrooms and numbers, failed to notice how empty his child's heart had become. That night, as Richard arrived home from a late business dinner, he heard something unusual, the sound of laughter, pure, unrestrained, childlike laughter echoing from upstairs. He froze on the marble staircase, gripping the railing, unsure if he was dreaming. He hadn't heard that sound in so long. Slowly, he climbed up, following the echoes to his son's room. The door was ajar, light spilling into the dark hallway. When Richard peered inside, his breath caught in his throat. His son was laughing uncontrollably, spinning in circles, while Maria, the housemaid, danced with him, twirling, clapping, and pretending to trip dramatically just to make him giggle louder. Ethan's small face glowed with a joy Richard hadn't seen in years. For a moment, Richard didn't move. He felt like an intruder watching something sacred, but then, emotions he had buried began to stir. He wasn't angry, he was shaken. The maid, Maria, a woman in her late 20s, had been working quietly in the mansion for nearly a year. She rarely spoke more than what was necessary. Yet here she was, bringing life back into the very heart of his home. The next morning, Richard asked her to step into his office. Maria looked nervous, wringing her hands, convinced she was about to be dismissed. Instead, Richard surprised her with a question. "Maria, how did you do it?" "Do what, sir?" she asked cautiously. "My son hasn't laughed like that in years. Last night, I saw something I couldn't give him." Maria hesitated, then spoke gently. "Because I didn't try to give him anything, sir. I just gave him time. I listened. I played. I let him be a child." Her words cut deeper than she could have imagined. Richard sat back, guilt washing over him. He had given Ethan every luxury, but never the one thing that mattered most, himself. From that day forward, Richard began to change. At first it was awkward. He wasn't used to spending evenings at home instead of boardrooms. But with Maria's quiet encouragement, he started small. He played a board game with Ethan, read him a bedtime story, and eventually even tried dancing, though clumsily, until Ethan laughed so hard he nearly fell off his chair. But life wasn't suddenly perfect. The world of business was ruthless, and Richard faced pressure from his partners who accused him of losing focus. His reputation as a workaholic was shifting, and some even questioned his commitment. For the first time, Richard had to make a choice between constant expansion or building the one thing money couldn't buy: family. He chose Ethan. He started delegating work, trusting his team more, and prioritizing home over late-night meetings. It wasn't easy. Old habits clawed at him, but every time he heard his son's laughter echoing through the house, he remembered why he was doing it. In those months, something else changed too. Richard saw Maria in a different light. She wasn't just a maid anymore. She had been a bridge, a healer, someone who dared to touch the silence in his home and fill it with warmth. He learned of her own struggles, a young woman who had lost her parents early, working multiple jobs to support her younger brother's education. She carried her own wounds, yet chose to heal others with kindness. One evening, Richard asked her a question that had been heavy on his heart. "Maria, why did you care so much? You could have just done your job and left." She smiled softly. "Because sometimes the richest homes are the poorest in love. I couldn't let Ethan grow up believing that money is the same as happiness." Those words became the turning point in Richard's life. Slowly, his mansion transformed. It was no longer a place of cold silence, but a home where dinners were shared. Music played in the background, and laughter spilled from room to room. Maria eventually became more than just a guide for Ethan. She became a part of the family. Years later, Richard would tell this story at a charity gala, his son standing proudly beside him. "I thought success was measured by the size of my company," he said, his voice breaking with emotion. "But one night, I heard laughter upstairs. and it taught me the truth. Love, laughter, and time, those are the real treasures. And the audience, many of them wealthy men and women chasing endless expansion, sat in silence because in those words they saw themselves. Moral of the story: wealth without love is emptiness. Success without family is failure. Sometimes it takes the simplest act, a maid dancing with a lonely child, to remind us that life's true riches are found in connection, laughter, and love.